Hello, angels. Welcome. Hello, beloveds. Happy Saturday. So we are doing a pretty spontaneous shift. Pretty spontaneous shift here, and really wanted to share about what's going on and why the intensity on the planet. And so there's a definite astrological significance and explanation for it. So I commandeered Michael here to talk to you about it because it's really very much an area of specialty and decades. If I told you how many decades I would be aging, okay, what, 5 decades of professional work in this area, 4.5 decades, long time. Clearly he started when he was a toddler, but he's really an expert on this. The shift from the Piscean age to the Aquarian age, and that explains a lot of what the heck, the natural disasters, the pandemic, etc., etc. So I'm going to call on the light, and then Michael's going to take it from there. And so if you would just open yourself to receive, and perhaps you just reach up, stretch up, just allow the light to enter more areas of your body as you're taking a deep breath and let it out with some sound. Deep breath in, let it out with some sound and a shake. Just clear in your energy field as we open into the light of the Holy Spirit. We just ask that any imbalances, negativity from anyone present, anyone to watch our planet, just be taken and transmuted through grace. And Lord, we are open to miracles right now as we just let go and cast our burdens upon the Christ and go free. We open into God's grace, into the light. Just seeing that light infusing each one present as you just give up anything you no longer need that keeps you separate from God. We just see it all released, cleared, healed, transmuted as we come ever more open to the spiritual presences with us, assisting us, bringing us into greater alignment and one accord. The great archangels, the traveler, the silent ones, the Christ, by whatever name you know, Spirit, just call yourself forward into that presence now. We ask that that presence speak through us, each of us, as we do the work that God has implanted within us to do. That is ours alone to do. That is the work of the Spirit. And of course we ask all this for the highest good, and so be it. Amen. Thank you. Okay, so Michael, and if you guys have, please comment. I just want to say hi to Carrie, William, Dennis. Instagram, I can only see the last few people. Marcella, Carol, hello, angels. You can also comment on YouTube if you like. And if you have any questions at all, please go ahead and put those in the chat and we will answer those for you. So hello to Tony who just joined, and Radcliffe. And so Michael, talk to us a little bit about this significant astrological and global shift from the Piscean age to the Aquarian age.
Well, this has been talked about for a long time, and the idea of it, and there's been a sort of a glorification and a glamorization of the Aquarian age as being the golden age where everything will be perfect and there'll be no more war and no more fighting and no more disturbance. However, that's not necessarily true. It's just going to be a different focus and orientation, and what's going to primarily bring this about is not necessarily everybody on this planet coming into true altruism, but it's going to be driven largely through the pragmatic truth of necessity. So a simple way to look at it is we're sort of shifting from a time where the process of our growth and our ascension is going to shift away from the focus on me to the focus on we. if we could say it like saying, when the good of the we supersedes the good of the me, the kingdom of heaven starts to appear. But the kingdom of heaven doesn't necessarily mean everything's perfect. It just means that the collective good comes before the individual good, which doesn't mean it's an abandonment of the individual good, but it's a different focus now. Astrologically, in December, there was a conjunction that people were talking about in the sky, which basically a conjunction just means that there was alignment between two planets. And it was noted that this particular conjunction was the closest conjunction for these two planets, and I think it was about 800 years, which is, given that they conjunct fairly often. This was Jupiter and Saturn, and but it was noted because it was like, wow, that's a long time. And the interesting thing is that conjunction took place from astrological terms, at 0 degrees Aquarius, which would be 30 degrees in a sign, so could be a symbolic marker for this shift. I don't think this shift happens in a day or a minute. I think it's a progressive thing, like the shift from day to night. We have, the height of the day and the sun is overhead and it's so bright, and gradually the shift happens and we get into twilight and sunset and early evening and the dead of night, etc. And so this is a ongoing process. Now, one of the ways I say necessity is the key to this is because the situations that are showing up now on this planet are going to incentivize the world and all the people in it to work and think and live with more of a collective sense, the sense of the we, which means the responsibility of what each of us does, not only how it affects us, but how it affects the whole, how it affects others. And the biggest thing showing up in our world, in our lives, that is really going to demonstrate that, and is demonstrating, is the climate change, the whole climate crisis. But as an appetizer to that, we have the whole COVID situation. And so this gets very complex for all of us as individuals to figure out, well, what's the highest good, the highest choice? And it gets kind of complicated because the highest choice for one person, for example, might be, let's say, not get vaccinated, and for another person it would be to be vaccinated. Or for one person it could be, well, I'm not gonna burn this wood I have here that could keep me warm. And somebody else would say, no, the highest choice is for me to burn the wood because otherwise I'm going to freeze to death. So if this was a simple solution, an idealistic thing we could all embrace, it would be easy. But all that's happening here is being brought forward as a wake-up call and as an incentivization for us to make the shift and honor and cooperate with the higher energies that are coming forward to promote this shift. If we looked back to the teachings of Jesus and other masters, we would see that there was always this emphasis upon the collective. When he said, when you've done it to the least of these, you've done it unto me, it's really calling us forward to the realization of we are a part of each other and part of each other's lives, and that what affects one of us affects all of us. And so this is going to be taken to a whole different degree of not only understanding but of practice by mankind, and mankind's inability to do this or refusal to do this will be very catastrophic. And so the incentivization of the better life and the better circumstances will follow from working collectively will be the underlying incentive. it's almost like we get the message from the teachers, the masters, about what is the highest approach, and then being laggards on this planet as human beings who normally get caught up in our particular gain and without the consideration of the effect on the greater whole, then the consequences come. And we're hoping that people can wake up and choose this in a more conscious way, so that the consequences or the motivations that would make us choose in this direction will not have to be as severe as they might. So that's kind of a quick summary of what's going on. The byproduct of all this, the reward for mankind and for all the participants, will be greater availability and access to the spirit. One of the things that's going on to support this action, this change, is there is a coming together more and more of the angelic kingdom and the human kingdom, if we want to call them kingdoms. And part of it is because the angelic naturally work much more in the we, in the nature of their participation, their expression, and their experience naturally lends itself to working collectively and working to a common purpose. The individuation that human beings do is not so conducive to that, or not so automatically supportive of that. So this greater interface between the angelic and the human, this greater awareness, provides opportunity for both angels and humans. But as humans, we should particularly understand they're good role models for us to approach our life and to approach the consideration of our lives and our circumstances more as an angel would perceive it and approach it. This will set a good blueprint for how to successfully work in this new age that is coming forward.
Beautiful. And we have a question. If you guys have questions for Michael or myself, just put them in the chat. I'm going to try to figure out how to see that in Instagram. As you can tell, we're new to all this, but wanted to serve you in this way. And we did finally land on 9:30 a.m. on Saturday, so that is when we will be. Carol would like to know, what is the light action going on within the worldwide COVID vaccination? Are you talking about maybe Carol, you could to clarify a little, are you talking about the divisiveness with the vaccine, where people are very convinced their way is right? Have to go back to DSS by Spiritual Bridge Consultants. Thank you for joining us. Love and light to everybody at DSS. So what's the light action going on with the worldwide COVID vaccination? So if you can kind of clarify that question a little bit. It is interesting, the divisiveness of it. I'm guessing that's what she's talking about. So why don't you start with that, and if she has something more specific, she'll put that in the chat. Any other questions you have in the chat, and it doesn't have to be about this, it can be about anything.
The vaccines and the COVID are a very interesting circumstance here. We could look at COVID showing up in the way it is as the byproduct of, we'll call it the karma of mankind, going back to a much earlier time on our planet when technology moved very, very high, much as it is now. And the beings of that time, we'll say the humans of that time, delved very deeply into the genetic code and opened it up in a way that we are still figuring it out.
I just want to say, she does clarify that what she's talking about is she senses that the vaccine is creating a positive DNA change within us.
I've never really looked at it, the positive or negative of it. It's definitely, there's definitely concern about that. A lot of the apprehension people have about it is because the long memory within all the souls that were in the world back in the Atlantean times. There is the long memory of how the misuse of going into the genetics and the kind of going crazy with it. And that's why we have the myths of centaurs and minotaurs and satyrs, and we could go talk a lot about all that. So there's a caution in a lot of people around that, and and it is something to be very cautious about. However, the actions of that time opened up the ability for viruses to jump from species to species like they are. And so we're, in a sense, eating the karma of what happened thousands of years ago. And the solution to it is not necessarily to not open up the genetic code, because that's going to happen. And so the real question is, well, how do we do it? And is it monitored? And so I think we have to be very careful around all that. I think the vaccine is probably not the perfect way to deal with this, but it's probably the best way to deal with it, given I can't read anything without my glasses.
Just look at the camera.
Oh, I'm looking at the camera.
He's looking at your faces instead of the camera. We're looking at your comments. So.
Oh, I can't
Again,
read.
we're new to this.
So the positive of it is the protection against the protection of it is, could there be negative byproducts of all that? It's pretty soon to know. If there was a better solution to dealing with what this is than that, if we could do it all in certain ways, and I think there are a lot of things that could be done to protect people. The big problem is the mass of humanity isn't going to do that, and it doesn't have the psychological perspective and the clarity to do all the supplementations and all the different things where we might handle this without the need of a vaccine. Just because of the nature of where mankind is, it's kind of that, or letting this thing kind of run rampant. And the danger of letting it run rampant is the nature of viruses; they just tend to mutate. And remember, this is SARS-2. SARS-1 in the early 2000s, fortunately, wasn't very contagious. It never really made it to the United States. It was in Asia. However, it killed 80% of the people that got it. So those are both COVID-based illnesses. So if this thing is allowed to keep going, it will mutate, and it could well mutate into something that starts killing 80% of the people.
Is there any good news, spiritual significance about COVID? Is it walking a karma off the planet?
It's finishing, and it's a chance to learn what we didn't learn collectively in the ancient times of the Atlanteans, where we allowed the unrestrained ambition and desire for power, the lust and the greed and the avarices, the same things that we're all tested with, to win over against the greater good. And so a lot of things were done there that opened Pandora's box. And so this is a real problem. The good news is if this is worked with effectively, and the use of working with genes and genetics, you could have a golden age of healing, and the end of a lot of illnesses and stuff that are on this planet could be either eradicated or cured. And we could jump through just what they're already doing with the genes. We could, lifespans could be extended, and a lot of beautiful things could happen. So the real question is it a good thing or a bad thing? It's called how we're going to work with it. There's an adage, I got from the University of Santa Monica, where they say, how you relate to the issue is the issue. And when it comes to this whole question of genes, that's really what it's about. I don't think I wish it was different, that the world was ready to handle all this without vaccines. It just doesn't seem that that's the case. So I think that probably kind of like not an optima perfect way, but where we would be without this was really scary. So in that way, I think I don't know if that helps you. Does it do something great for us? Well, I think the positive use.
Wow.
The positive use of the gene therapy, or looking into the genetics, if it's done in the right way, is going to be a wonderful blessing for mankind. Will it be that way? We don't know yet. We have to be very watchful. We have to understand that human ambition can corrupt something that could be great. So it's a real interesting walk.
I think you answered this, and then let's all send the light. Carlos Argueta said, we just had a 5.0 earthquake in El Salvador at, I'm not going to say this right, Acajutla, thank you, to be precise, an hour or so ago. Is this part of the play out of the changes that are taking place, and what is our part regarding these energies? And so let's all send the light, please, to El Salvador at Acajutla. And I just wanted to get the light in there really quick. And but let's just finish about the pandemic, and then I'm sure it's all related. But Barbara, I think you've answered this, but Barbara says, could you finish about the spiritual, the purpose of this pandemic spiritually? And then we have a question from Arlene.
Well, from a spiritual purpose, it's karma returned. Another way of saying it is we're here on this planet to learn and grow individually, but also collectively. And there are lessons that affect all of us, and there are lessons that affect us as individuals, but lessons nonetheless. Something like this is one that kind of reaches out and affects pretty much the whole world. So how are we going to address it? How are we going to learn from it? You know, souls don't leave heaven to come to heaven. They line up to get on this planet because it's such a powerful place to learn and grow, because it's so challenging. So though there's more light coming into the world than ever before, it's also pushing up challenges in individuals and challenges in countries, in all sorts of groups. So the great blessing is that we're getting a chance to revisit all this and get another chance to handle it in a more efficient, effective way, and that's a blessing, because that's how we finish that karma. But it's not done against us, but how we handle it could make us think it's against us.
Beautiful. So let's talk about, Carlos, because it's not just the pandemic, it's the natural disasters, the fires, the floods, the hurricanes, earthquakes, and we felt an earthquake yesterday, and so yesterday here in Pacific Palisades in Los Angeles.
It was 4.3, so a little
was
small.
it 4.3 earthquake? We felt that last night. So, and Carlos just says there's a 5.0 earthquake. So, is that part of the play out of the change that's taking place, and what's our part regarding these energies?
Well, as human beings, we can pray and hold light, send light, as they say, for the process. Think of it like this: the world is shifting, things are changing, there's so much evidence of it. Obviously, when you have floods and fires, earthquakes have been part of this change for a long time. And think of it like the earth is adapting and shifting and changing in response to, obviously, the things that man are doing that are affecting the climate. But more than that, the earth is adjusting energetically, and which then also means it adjusts physically. If you think of the earth as a higher consciousness, and that within that consciousness it holds a form, then you could have a shift in the consciousness that then translates into a shift in the form. And that's what you see. And the earthquakes, the fault lines, think of it like if you took somebody's head and you looked at their head and you said, wow, look at all those little lines between the bones, those suture lines. Well, you could kind of think of the fault lines as like suture lines. And you on the head, you go, well, why does it have that? Well, for us to breathe and for our brains to work properly, there's actually a pumping action in the brain. And so when we inhale, there's a slight expansion in the head, and that's the cranial sutures move. If those sutures were sealed and don't move, you have some real problems. Occasionally that happens with a brain injury, and the sutures are no longer able to move. And sometimes it's a kind of retardation, and sometimes it's just terrible pain. So these kind of shifting around of like an earthquake or something like that are always reflective of a shift in the dynamic energetically of what's going on. Now some of the things that go on with that are kind of remarkable in terms of some very, very big earthquakes and stuff like that. And if you could actually see what's going on, you'd go, oh my God, it's such a big physical change, and so many things happen from it. But on a greater understanding, it's actually more of a metaphysical change, and the physical change is a byproduct of the metaphysical shift. And if we had a lot of time, could probably spend half an hour just talking about some of the big shifts I've seen with that. Sometimes as earthquakes, but the earthquake is reflective of a huge shift going on. Now, there's a lot we do about it. Collectively, all do something about it by the approach we hold, the attitude we hold, the light we hold. You know, our prayers, our focus, they all make a difference. Just remember, relative to our proportional size, it's a big planet, so it takes a village to raise a child. Well, it takes a populace to heal a planet. So for us, in the Piscean age was more a time where we had beings show up in this world that knew the way and offered us a way to participate more in that way. And yet the heavy lifting was done by those individuals. We're in a time now when there's going to be more and more people coming awake. And because of so many people having a level of awakening, the collective power of their consciousnesses will help to facilitate the positive shift that we'd all like to see happen. And so you go, what do I do? Well, become one of those who's awake.
Beautiful. Do you foresee any kind, this is from Arlene McKenna Wanzer. Do you foresee any kind of intervention from a large force, such as Q or military, to get us back to law and order?
No. I think it's not impossible, but I think well, let's put it this way, we're going to have this is a time of unrest, okay? So if we're talking about the United States, for example, so as in the United States, we're working, we're also, like the rest of the world, we're dealing with the Atlantean karma coming back. So a lot of that we're seeing mostly related to technology in particular. But also in terms of government to a degree. The bigger karma that the United States is in that relates very much to government has to do with Roman karma, as the United States was built as an exact replicant of the Roman Republic in terms of the structures of how they designed the government and everything else. And so right now in the United States, in the whole power political situation, we're revisiting something that the Roman Empire visited about halfway through the 1,000 years of Rome. And there came a time in Rome where there was a tremendous unrest there. People think, oh, you mean like Julius Caesar. Well, Julius Caesar was kind of a byproduct he wasn't the first of the Roman generals who sort of made himself the ultimate power. He just did it in a way and then said, and I'm making this permanent, where it happened before him, and then they would come in and flex their muscles and make, in a sense, send the country the way they wanted to, and they'd step back. So this isn't it, but a lot of people don't. If you were to study the history, it would be kind of amazing to realize in the time before Julius Caesar, there were, I think it was either 15 or 17 Civil War type experiences going on in the Roman Empire, but at that point it wasn't as big as it got, but it was still the places which were different parts were rebelling against the whole. And so we're in a time like that where there's tremendous fracture about this group wants this, that group wants that. There's an ideology that says it should be like this, but here's a competing ideology that comes forward. And so we're in a time of that, and will it turn into a power coming forward who will, you say, return it to order? Well, that was the whole premise of why Caesar and then his grandson Augustus, or Octavian, who became Augustus Caesar, started the whole tradition of the emperors and fundamentally reversed the nature of the republic into a totalitarian state, basically reversing where the head of the proconsul, which is their president, was there to carry out the wishes of the Senate. It got reversed that the Senate became there to carry out the wishes of the proconsul, which then was the Caesar. So we're in an interesting time. We don't know how it's going to play out here. Could that happen? It's possibly could happen, but if this gets solved through some kind of military authoritative thing like that, then the possibility, even the probability that it turns into a military state and ends the democracy experiment in this country and perhaps all countries, that's very possible what's going to happen. So I would think that, I don't really know that I see that. We have some very, very strong karmic things to look at that's going to be hitting us in 4, 5, 6 years, which makes it very likely that where the United States will be in some kind of war, and it won't be a little war. So that's not necessarily definitive, but there's going to be some kind of huge battle, and it was not likely to be just. Could it be a battle like a civil war here? Yeah, but I think more likely it's going to be a battle with another country or countries. And does that have to happen? No, but there's going to be a lot of coming to head that's going to play out, which isn't going to be much fun. So could it come from within the military? I think there is a tremendous impetus to try and slow down the change in a lot of people, and so they look to something that says, we'll turn back the clock and make it the way it used to be. And I think there's a lot of attraction to that idea in many people. It's just, I don't think it's going to work that way. And some force or some people may come forward to implement that and try and make that so, and I think they'll find out it doesn't work.
So that's related to Barbara's question, and then we have a couple questions from Denise and Judea that are similar to each other. So Barbara says, so she says for us late 60s. Actually, I'm going to take the second question, Barbara's second question first, because it's related to exactly what you're saying. Do you have a sense of where we should, as light bearers, do you have a sense of where we should focus the rest of our lives while all of this is going on? Thank you, guys.
As light bearers, as any human being, where we, quote, should focus on our attention is always going to be to focus on the light, or to focus into higher consciousness. There's the biggest outer demonstration of the challenge here is going to be related to the climate. The things like, what about this and the political and the unfairness in the systems? And I go, those are all very valid things that are worthy of any of us putting our attention into to try and help improve the situation. But the actual shifts to the dynamic of life itself through the whole process of we call climate change is going to be the biggest thing. The problem is it's hard to know what to do as an individual. You say, well, okay, I'll drive a less polluting car and I'll do this and that, but it seems like not enough. But supporting those people who do have influence economically, socially, governmentally, who would really step forward and help us do what we can, that would be, from a higher perspective, that would be the greatest good we could do. Which isn't saying there aren't a lot of other places where, there's a lot of things going on which are not reflective of love on this planet. So anywhere you're called to serve and you're called to put your focus, that makes sense to me. However, the biggest problem and the real biggest hit is this whole climate thing. People are just not understanding the scope of what this could turn into. They're starting to get a little bit of a clue here lately when they see, 122 degrees in British Columbia in June. That's 9 degrees hotter than there's in 250 years of tracking the temperature in Canada. That's 9 degrees hotter than it's ever been, and that's not even at their hottest time of year. That's like, we're seeing things that are just like, the floods. Central Park, they've been tracking the amount of rain since 1859, and the most they'd ever had in that period of time. They're tracking a certain number of hours. In 1927, they'd had 2 inches. Well, what was it, last week? They had 7.5 inches in that. I think it was a 6-hour time period or whatever. I was like, the world is the actual physical world itself is being extremely reversed and damaged, and the byproduct of this, people are not really aware. This is just the beginning. So that's going to be the great unifier or the great divider. And what we do, the more we do about it, the easier it's going to be. I remember my spiritual teacher talking about the future, and he had a lot of the gift to see the future, and he talked about, in the time to come, and he mentioned, there might only be about 1 billion people on the earth. Well, we're pretty close to 8 billion now. So if we don't handle what's coming, does it mean the end of life on earth? Not necessarily, but it might mean, the reduction of worldly population by maybe 7 billion people. I kind of go, that's kind of a big deal. So, yeah, I guess because you're looking for something outwardly, the biggest thing is the more you stay connected to the light and the more you're awake to the higher consciousness, the more you become an avenue of that higher consciousness working into the world to change the world, but even more so to change the consciousness of the people in the world, to help them again get to that higher we and away from that selfish me.
And let's just take a moment now to just lift the energy now and to bring ourselves into the light of the Holy Spirit. So call yourselves forward into that grace and into that light. And just perhaps tap your heart and just say open. God is a God of love. All is well and all shall be well. Not as a place of denial, but as a place of affirmation. But all of this is for us, not to us. That God's grace is imminent. And yes, there's darkness on the planet, but there's also more light than ever. So just open your hearts and affirm that, envision that, see that, be aware, wake up to that. And that is a place of utmost and imminent service. Take a deep breath, let it all go. Yeah. So I wanted to answer Barbara's first question, and thank you guys for sticking with us. This is a lot longer than my usual 10, 15, 20 minutes, but it certainly seems important and present. Barbara says, for us late 60s and 70s who have had careers, experiences, successes already, we are somewhat lost to our next steps, particularly initiates and ministers. And I just wanted to address that for a moment. You know, we those who are highly intended, and I think that includes everyone here, even be on this call, those of us who are highly intended to the spirit, to our spiritual progression, to waking up, growing up spiritually, we come in where we work out our karma, and it's really pain and lack pushing us. I need money, I want to get out of pain, I want a family, I want success, etc. And it's like we're driven by that, and we get up in the morning because I gotta, feed the baby, I gotta get money in the bank, I gotta get out of pain, I gotta be okay. And that pushes us, and we get to a point where it's like, okay, I'm fine, kids are fine, career, I'm kind of going, it's all fine, and yet we get kind of in this place of in media res, in the middle of things, in limbo, where it's like, I'm not in pain necessarily, I'm not in, panic about what am I going to do with my life, I don't have this big thing of needing to lead the next mass exodus to Venus. Now what? It's kind of an ennui. It's kind of like, why am I getting up and why am I still here? If you can relate to that, just throw something in the chat. Otherwise, I'll think it's just me. And we come to this time where it's like, I'm fine, but I'm like, what? What is waking me up in the morning? And then we get to a point where we surrender, and love starts pulling us. Lack was pushing us, now love starts pulling us. And our dharma, our service, instead of our karma, is now pulling us forward. And that may be that we are of service to a climate change organization or a church or children. And it also may be that we just get really highly intended to waking up. To me, really the greatest service we can do, while all the outer stuff is fantastic, and please continue that, please. But the greatest service is waking up to the truth of spirit, to seeing all this that's going on from a bird's eye, or if you will, an angel's eye view, looking through the eyes of the Christ, and holding that vision of the intricacies of what is working out, impelling us all to the light, impelling us all towards our dharma collectively. So it's really that, if I'm not sure what I'm doing, I would suggest then go deeper within, wake up more, open to who am I as a godly being, and what is spirit directing me towards as my dharma. And again, maybe something grand, and it may be something very simple. I'm moved to support this person whose loved one is transitioning. I'm moved to support this organization. But let's keep coming back to our greatest service is waking up. Did you want to add anything to that?
No, that was beautiful.
Thank you. And hello, the new people who have joined on Instagram. I'd say hi, but a lot of you have Instagram names. But hello. I didn't recognize Marcia Pinchels. I'm not sure if I said your name right. But hello, loves. And all the people have just joined on Facebook. And you're so welcome, Steve and Donna. So Linda has a question. Absolutely. As we wake up, others can catch it. 100%. There's the positive of the, what's infectious. Let's let love be the pandemic. But I wanted to, and we'll come back to your question, Linda. I'm not sure if that was a question. No, that was just an affirmation of to bring my awareness to love and bring forward that loving to this planet. Amen and hallelujah. Beautiful. Michael says, Om Shalom Amin Aho. I hope I said that right. Probably not, but I hope you get the spirit of it, Michael. So I wanted to just come back. Hi, Heidi, my sister. Come back to Judea's and Denise's question, which is related. Denise asks, is there a way vaccines are a collective action and a choice in that way? Is there a way vaccines are a collective action and a choice in that way? I think she means are vaccines a choice towards a collective action. If you did not mean that, Denise, let me know in the comments. And then related, Judea says, do you think fear is a way to get COVID? Could we be immune by believing that we are protected without a vaccine? I'll just read KDB's comment. Pandemics, approximately every 100 years, are one way the Earth monitors life. How brilliant. And she wants to know, why hasn't it affected large countries like China, Russia? So I don't know if you can put all those three together, but
There's a lot of questions in there.
yeah.
Affected large countries, like if she's talking about the virus affected China and Russia, well, it has. They've been, both China and Russia have been they're very controlled countries, and they've very much limited information. But let's put it this way: there's somebody I know who had the access into the a very sophisticated tech person, and they knew how to access into, let's say, Russian stuff in the Russian government, which was the actual numbers related to how much COVID was in Russia, and the numbers were, I mean, let's just put it as that they were under, maybe it was 50 times as much as they were reporting was actually going on. So, and the Chinese have, obviously, the whole world knows the Chinese have underreported. So it's been going on big time there, just like here. The Chinese having the power, because of the authoritarian nature of their government, to do radical things to shut things down. In a way, we could say handled it better in the big picture, because they've really limited COVID because they're so ruthless about it. And then you'd say, well, that's a plus possibly of a authoritarian society. Yeah, there are some pluses in authoritarian societies, but there's a lot of minuses too. And so, but the Chinese get things built and get things done that we could never do here now because of the divisiveness. So it's not that there isn't some good in that, but it's like the good and the bad. Now, there was a lot of questions in there.
Denise wants to know if the vaccine is a collective action and choosing to be, I think this is right, Denise, correct me if I'm wrong, choosing to be vaccinated, is that part of choosing into a collective action?
It can be. There are people for different reasons who would be, some people with immune disease things, and who would make sense not to get vaccinated. Now, of course, if you have an immune problem, you sure better not get COVID. So, but if a person has a setup where they can really effectively stay away, and so that they can put themselves at very low risk, it could make sense for them individually. Yeah, I think in general, the action of getting vaccinated is working to a collective purpose. But that's in general. There's always going to be individual cases where that doesn't hold true. And there are going to be people who, live their life in such a way that they can either stay clear of COVID, or they can get it and know that it'll be minimally affecting them. And so there are different cases, but in general, you go down to the cities where the masses of our populace are more in the cities now than out in the country. For those people, the choice to not getting vaccinated is for themselves potentially, a choice to severe illness or death, but also it's a choice for severe illness and death to go to their loved ones and the other people they live with. So it's kind of looking more and more like that's unfortunately that seems to be the way out. Is largely going to be the vaccinations. I would love it if it didn't need to be that. I'm not a vaccine fan, believe me. We didn't vaccinate our kids. There's a lot about it I don't like. This thing's just a little different. So the collective thing is to continually look to what is going to be the highest good for most people. Personally, I had a 92-year-old mother, and the idea of coming to visit my mother and inadvertently having COVID, because I'm somebody who almost never gets sick, so I probably would get it and very likely be asymptomatic. But what if I got it? I brought it home. She wouldn't be. She would be dead in a few days. So, that bothered me, and I realized, so there's an accountability to the collective good. A lot of people don't always understand that they think, well, but I wasn't trying to get them sick. It's like saying, well, I wasn't trying to. It was like saying, well, I wasn't trying to hit that pedestrian. No, but you were texting, or you were driving too fast, or you were. So, and that's that karma, which we call inadvertent karma, is still karma. And so, it's a tricky thing, but that's what I can say about the collective good. It will be in mankind's collective good to be done with this COVID as soon as they can. Because with everything else that's coming, that's the last thing they need. It's like watching when there's a hurricane showing up and they have to gather everybody together in Louisiana, and where they're all going to go into this big building where people are going to be safe. And in a state where only 40% of the people are vaccinated, and you got hundreds of people gathering together in a room for hours and hours and hours together, it's kind of like it's a double whammy. Because it's like, wearing a mask is not going to do you much good if you're standing next to somebody for hours and hours. So there's so many questions there.
There's actually we're pretty much done with questions, unless anybody has a last minute question.
I heard like 5 questions I answered.
You answered all of them pretty much, unless you want to address.
About fear.
Yeah, can we be immune by believing we are protected without a vaccine?
There's a biblical thing, where they talk about the idea if one has faith, then one could drink poison and be unharmed. One could be bitten by a snake and be unharmed. And the belief doesn't do it. If you have a knowing of the spirit of your spiritual nature that is strong enough, there could be a protection that comes through that. If you can live enough in that consciousness. But belief in itself, there's a whole lot of people on this planet who don't believe in reincarnation, and they're all reincarnating. And there's a whole lot of people that are, they're in hospital in some states when they're getting hospitalized and they get COVID, and they go, there's no such thing, I can't have COVID. And it doesn't stop them from dying from it. And they're literally nurses talking about the person is there on a ventilator, and they're saying, but this is impossible because there is no such thing as COVID. So there's no way I could have COVID, and then they die. So belief is overvalued. If you have a knowing, it's like the value of faith. Like a lot of very, quote, spiritual people, you hear the stories of them, and they're head of some church, or they're very famous and they're a preacher and everything, and they get close to dying and the terror they go through. And you think, wait a minute, they were all preaching about God was with them and everything's fine and they're going to heaven. Now they start to get close to death and they're in abject terror because they were just believing it, they didn't know it. So there can be a protection that comes through knowing. Again, you better make sure that protection that comes through knowing is available to you, because that which has the knowing, in a sense, is extending you that protection because it serves the purpose of that which is the source of the knowing, rather than you and your personality wanting it to be true. So you're pretending it's true, and then you find out your pretense didn't work. So the difference in that is important, because a lot of people play that game. I often tell people, just because we want something to be so does not make it so, but it does incline us to see it so. So I would be careful.
Okay, we have got a lot of, I don't know if we're going to get to all these questions, but we will do our best. So Samantha, I hope I'm saying this right, Vezi, and hi, new people have joined on Instagram. And I see your question, NJ Halo. I hope I said that right. We will hopefully get to that. I just wanted to address one on YouTube that has been here for a while. Joanne says, I heard JR say once, JR is John Roger, many years ago, it's pollution that's going to kill us. That stayed with me. Michael's remarks on population diminishing adds more truth to this. Thank you, Michael. And KDP says, I learned climate change back in the 60s, not new news. Unfortunately, no. Hi, Louise. Samantha says, hello all. I'd love to know if you can give any insights on how the Middle East situation goes with this shift to the Aquarian age. I'm so grateful for you. Thank you. You're so very welcome. And I just want to read Natalie's comment. Natalie Ambruso says, thank you so much for speaking on these topics. Your words have given me more peace. Love and light to all. You're so welcome. So Samantha, how does the Middle East situation go with the shift from the Piscean age to the Aquarian age? For those who've just jumped on, we started off this talk talking about this is really all part and parcel of the shift from the Piscean age, or the age of me, to the Aquarian age, which is the age of we, the more the collective. So can you speak a little bit about the Middle East and how that relates to this shift?
Well, Middle East is kind of a big area because there's a lot of different stories going on in the Middle East. So obviously when sometimes when people talk about the Middle East, they're talking about Israel versus the Palestinian situation, or they're talking about Iran and the question about will it be nuclear? Are we talking about ISIS? Are we talking about Afghanistan, the U.S. pulling its troops out, and the Taliban now coming back into control, and what's that going to mean? So there's a lot of stories going on. And the stories that are going on there are very reflective of what we're talking about in terms of the transition from to more of a, let's say, an outlook where the determinant of choice is something that goes on what might personally benefit us as individuals, into that which would be for the greatest good or the highest good. So it's playing out there. There's a lot of karma from the past connected to that part of the world, being one of the more ancient parts of the world in terms of civilizations and societies. There's there was something that started an opening of karma. Let's say, think of it like this: for the Aquarian age, and that is possible, the one we all go, oh yeah, I'll have what they're having, I want that. For that to take place, certain things have to shift and change, and it's sort of like a lot of old things have to be completed. We could call it karmas, have to be completed. And so, they won't put the new wine in the old skin kind of adage, I think, is out of the Bible. And so you kind of go, all right, so how do we get rid of the old skin? Well, in a way, it has to come up, and it's being brought forward. And as that karma gets brought forward, it's like it creates a conflict. It's the new energies coming in to bring forward a new way of relating to the world and participating in the world. And there are just a lot of old entrenched things pushing back. And the Middle East is a place where you see that in graphic fashion. And you'll see places where they're trying to synergize the two, like to synergize the old with the new. And it's interesting to see how that will work. places I'm talking about where you really see that going on would be a place like Dubai, or maybe Saudi Arabia even, where you have, they're still working under the Islamic law, and the law, I mean, like, for example, the restrictions on women still in a place like Saudi Arabia are immense. And yet you go there and you have modern buildings and, you know, Rolls Royces and modern cars, and so they want the benefits of the technology, but they're trying to still maintain a lot of things that are part of their ancient traditions. And that's a place where it's like the past and the future are kind of colliding, like bam. And so the Middle East is a lot of where that's playing out in a more graphic form. I mean, it's playing out here in the United States, but it's a little different because the United States, because of its history, it is, I mean, yes, there's tradition here, but the traditions here that are dominant are not really old traditions as much as they are in a place like the Middle East. So, yeah, the how do they find a way to work it? You know, it's like, you know, you see these movies like, what was the movie that came out was, you know, it's like, was it Independence Day? A movie came out years ago, and aliens or giant spaceships of aliens come in, and they're just going to destroy the world. And in the end, the nations of the world unite to fight off the aliens. And so what happens is they find a collective purpose that transcends their individual disputes. I remember in that movie, there's one scene where they're talking about other countries, and they have it's like the Israelis are talking to the Egyptians and sharing information, and or the Syrians, whoever. So it's like these guys are enemies, but now there's a bigger enemy, so they're come together to deal with a bigger enemy. And in a sort of way, the Middle East is where a lot of that's playing out in a graphic way. But the karma there is very old, and I don't have all the answers to it because it's still at play. And that's what I got for that.
Beautiful. So we let's do one more question that came in from Aubrey. I'm not sure if she's still Aubrey. If you're still here, say hi in the comments. We were going to answer her question. We're just taking the questions in the order that they came in. If Aubrey is not here, then we'll take another question, and then we will do a blessing and send you off into your weekend with a blessing. Again, let's just take in a deep breath and let it all go. Just release yourself. It is important to clear yourself from the group energy, the group fear, group despair, etc. So easy to just go clear group despair, clear group panic, whatever it seems to be, so that you are in your own aegis, your own energetic, and not taking on things from the planet at this time. So just remember to clear your consciousness. Aubrey is still here. Okay, so we'll answer Aubrey's question. Corinne, I see your question, love it. It came in after Aubrey's, so hopefully, so we should be able to get to that next time, which will be next Saturday. We're planning on being here, we or me. I totally drafted Michael at 10 minutes before we went live, and which is true, and he was very cooperative. It'll either be me or we live every Saturday at 9:30 a.m. on just this kind of thing. So Aubrey, hi Jay, just joined. Linda says, keeping our eyes on God, loving, positive picturing, and maybe a planetary blessing. Oh, I think that was a topic she wanted to see for the future. Of course. And if you have any other topics you want to see for the future, ones of these, just throw those in the comments and I'll make a record of those. And Corinne, I think I already said this, but we will try to get to your question next time, and I hear you. It's hard to know what information is what accurate and what is not out there, and that's where we got to go to the heart. Okay, so Aubrey would like to know, thank you so much for your generous offering and support for humanity. We love and appreciate you both. You're so welcome. Where's your question, Angel? Oh, how do we prepare our children for what they will face in the future? Are there safer places for them on this earth? A well, understandable question from a mama. And I would extend that to our children and all of our loved ones. How do we prepare? How do we reconcile that fear, especially for those who are inheriting this planet after us? Yes.
Mostly by how you model approaching life is the greatest gift you can give to your children. So you want to model loving first and foremost, and you also want to model an openness to look and to consider things. Model industrious nature, so that you're not taking for granted the good things you have, then you're willing to work for them, but also and to work to help produce more of the world you want to live in. And people will follow suit, and your children will be affected by that. I remember when I was growing up, there was a large part of land that was that was like it was vacant, and it was trash, and people were doing things there, and the city didn't know what to do with it. And my father went to the city and said, I'll organize the community, and we will put in a park, and we will put in landscaping and trees and everything else. If you provide the materials, I'll organize the community, I'll organize the people, and we'll do all the work. Well, the city was like, never heard anything like that, so they agreed. And so, it's been 45, 50 years since I still go back there, because my mother still lives back in the neighborhood, and there's that park, and there's all those beautifully landscaped roadways, and all that thing that used to be just is so beautiful. Why? Because somebody stepped forward and organized people, because people want to be part of that, but sometimes they don't know how to get involved, and how to make a difference. They want to make a difference, but they don't know how to make a difference, and they're kind of overwhelmed. And so part of what you do is you model that for your children as somebody who will step forward and initiate and instigate. And I'm actually married to somebody who's really good at doing that, and has actually been an inspiration for me for that kind of thing, to for hurricane fundraisers and all sorts of projects. And it's not always easy to do, but the more you set the example of that, they'll see that and they'll model it, because that's what our children do. Yeah, they get older as teenagers, and it's almost like we become the anti-model.
Well, it's just that we don't know anything anymore.
Yeah, because we have dementia, we don't know, and so there is that time. But
tell them that quote from
Mark Twain.
Mark Twain.
Yeah, he said, when I left home when I was 21, and my father just didn't know very much, and I came home at 29. It was amazing how much he'd learned. And so it's kind of like there is that almost inevitable part of raising our kids. And in terms of where to go and this quote, going to be safe, that's the reality that really brings this home more and more to people, that there's almost no way to know. I mean, we had a huge heat wave up in the Pacific Northwest. I mean, British Columbia hit 122 degrees. Seattle had 3 days of 100-degree weather, I think in, 100 years. They had 3 in a row. Portland, Oregon, 115 degrees. It was like things I've never seen before. And the one thing we don't know, the thing we know is we don't know what's going to happen, where the shifts are going to be. So you might think this will be safe. You can make guesses called it's going to get hotter. So probably places that are very hot and dry are only going to get hotter and drier. But we don't know that for sure, because weather patterns could change. If you look historically at the planet, you look at Egypt, and you look at old things they have, but it says back to 3,000-4,000 years ago, Egypt was there was huge jungles. Well, that's only 3,000 or 4,000 years, but this is moving faster than that, so we don't know. But what I would do is, there will be one who always knows, and that's the one within you, the one that we are all connected to. We can call it God, we can call it Spirit, we can call it Gaia, I don't care what we call it, but it's something that will source, and what it'll show us is what's the highest good for us. So it'll show you what's the highest good for your children on where to be. Which is you say, does it mean we'll absolutely be safe? No, maybe your highest good is you go there and you're not safe. But maybe that's where your destiny is, because maybe while you're there, you make some huge difference, or your kids do. What we all want to do is be guided and get in touch with guidance. Yes, it's nice if we have somebody else who can give us that guidance, and occasionally we get that. But there's just too many choices and decisions in life. Unless you have you have a personal cell phone where you can call up the spiritual master, day or night, anytime you want, and get the support you need. You're going to have to start getting it within. And that's how it's designed for us to get it within. Those who have that capacity or walk around the world aren't there to take the place of us going inside. They're really there to be an incentivization for us to go inside and to help us move past limitations and blocks we might have to going inside. But in the end, the teacher is within. So that would be my answer. You'll know if you're willing to know and willing to do what it takes to know. You'll have the answer, and it'll be fine. There is a higher power behind all this. As much as we can talk about, these people might die, etc., etc., there is a higher power that is behind the whole thing and is working it. Yet we also recognize that higher power allowed the Holocaust to take place. That higher power allows genocides. That higher power is allowing all the things we look around the world go, I don't like that, I don't like that. It's still being allowed. You mean, so does that mean it's good? No, it's allowed because it's a place of learning. So, but as individuals and collectively, the more we can learn to be attuned, to get to that clear, still place inside and receive of that guidance, and then perhaps share that guidance, well, the better it'll be for your children and for all of us as well. Thank you.
Beautiful. So I have made notes in the process of making notes on topics you'd like for a future one of these. So we will be here. They won't usually be this long. We kind of went on and on because, it was an important, of course, the pandemic, vaccinations, how to prepare our children, climate change, all very important topics. So we went on for a bit here. But thank you so much. I love someone's comment in Instagram says, it looks like I'm listening to Rudolf Steiner's thoughts. That's sweet. And hi, Rebecca. As within, so without. Exactly. Yes. I can't remember. It was some spiritual master's quote where they said, what is the greatest service we can do? And they said, wake up. And so I don't remember who that was. Probably lots of them. So that's really the gist. So let's just take in a deep breath, send you off with a blessing. Deep breath, let it out with some sound. Let go of all the fears, concerns, group energy. And we just ask that each one here be cleared through God's grace of any group despair, panic, fear, upset. Just clear through the Christed light and the light of the Holy Spirit. For the highest good as we open into the light of grace, into the light of the Holy Spirit, that the light of the Christ would infuse each one here, bringing balance, bringing loving, bringing hopefulness, bringing the truth that God is love and all that occurs is for us. As we just open to the glorious great archangels, the silent ones, the traveler of the Christ, the divine mother, the collective consciousness of loving, that we might come ever more into the Aquarian age, into that glorious awareness that we are that we are each and all one with the beloved, and that as we surrender into that awareness, personally, we are blessed beyond measure. We send the light out to our planet at this time, asking that any karma, negativity that can be walked off the planet, be walked off the planet with ease, with grace. As we see our planet bathed in the most luminescent light, a brilliant, sparkling white light, like crushed starlight, our entire planet, all the consciousness within it, the consciousness of the planet, the logos of the Mother Earth, all of us each be bathed in this brilliant crushed starlight. And just see that crushed white starlight now transmuting negativity as it transmutes the magnetic light into the clear light of the Holy Spirit. So that light gets softer and softer. And now it's just a shimmer. And it turns into the clear light of the Holy Spirit. May each one here and those to watch be blessed and sanctified in every way. And so be it. And blessed be and amen. Thank you so much, everyone. So much love to you. See you next Saturday at 9:30 a.m. And for the foreseeable future, please feel free to comment with any topics you'd like, suggestions, and bye-bye for now.